Let's go ahead and start. I wanted to make a comment about the exams. What was the comment? Oh. When a quiz or exam asks for an author's name, give both names. In other words, first and last. You're going to see when we get to, it's going to be real easy with Sophocles, because you only have one. You're going to see when we get to poetry, 2, maybe 3 poets use first, last, and middle names. Samuel Taylor Coleridge, Percy Bysshe Shelley, and I just had the other one. Gerard Manley Hopkins. I think those are the only 3. And so if one of their poems shows up, and it says name the author, I'm going to want all 3 names. All right. Similarly, if it asks for a character's name, you need to give the character's name that is actually used in the text. For example, the character that the family meet in Good Man is Hard to Find when they stop to eat. The owner of the service station / place where they eat. What's his name?
Red Sammy.
Red Sammy. Throughout the text, at one point it's Red Sammy Butts, but I think that's a sign. But he is referred to as 2 different ways, Red Sam and Red Sammy. He's never called just Red, and he's never called just Sam. Okay? Bobby Lee is always called Bobby Lee. It's never Bobby, and it's never Lee. So in order to get full credit for those, you've got to have those full names. Spelling, it'd be nice if you spelled them correctly, but I understand there's going to be lots of times spelling's going to be a little different, little variations and stuff. I don't pick off for that. So this class, I think most of the exams, it might be about 50, 55%. Most of the exams have been graded. I don't know if you can see the results yet. I haven't published the full class. I think it should show yours individually when I go through and everything, and I hit a button called update. And then it gives me the total tally for the exam. Okay, picking up with where we didn't leave off, with where the video lecture left off the other day. Sorry about having to cancel class the last 2 days. When I left class on Friday, I ended up spending 6.5 hours in the emergency room for some phantom pain. And then Monday I canceled class to get in to see my doctor. Wednesday I canceled class because the doctor had ordered some tests. Turns out probably to be a strained muscle, which is very odd because it did not feel at all like a strained muscle. So 1137 in the 11th edition, and this is going to be probably somewhere, I didn't bring in the other one. 17 pages. Probably somewhere about 1458, 1457, 1459, something like that in the 10th edition. So, Oedipus is called Tiresias. Why? How many of you finished it? Let me ask this. If you haven't, that's fine. How many of you have not finished this play? Put your hands up. Okay. How many of you have read any of it? Again, put your hands up. Don't feel bad. A couple of you haven't read any of it. Okay. Well, let's back up then. Even if you watch the video lecture. Let's back up to the beginning. I'm not going to go over the conventions of Greek drama and tragedy and all that kind of stuff. I want you to, that's gone over in that lecture that I posted, and it's in the book. I would strongly encourage you to read the study of Sophocles, beginning of, I guess it's chapter 44, and especially take note of the items in boldface in the section on the theatrical conventions like orchestra and scanny and Deus Ex Machina, the five different parts of a drama on page 1124 in the 11th edition. You have the word prologue in bold, and I don't know why in this edition the other terms aren't in bold, but they should be. They were in the 10th edition. I'm almost positive they were in the 10th edition. But you have the word prologue, and then you have in italics, Parados, Episodia, Stasmon, and Exodus. You need to know what those are. Those are the five parts of a Greek drama, okay? Greek tragedy. Typically divided into five parts, and it goes on and mentions and describes kind of what each one does, okay? The next couple pages discuss primarily Greek tragedy in a couple of very important terms like tragedy, hamartia, tragic flaw. And then the terms on the page before Oedipus begins. All right, so go over all of those carefully. Now, I think I've mentioned this before. The material in the play, Oedipus the King, the characters and the story, they're not new when Sophocles writes this. I mean, this is myth. This is old in Greek culture. So when his audience kind of sees this, they know the general story, right? It's his take on it and how he presents it, because he has apparently, or seemingly, an idea that he's pushing, right? Not an ideology, it's not propaganda. It's he wants people to wrestle, okay, with this issue, fate versus free will. Do we have free will? That is, am I free to choose and do what I wish? And I don't mean like legally. Question? No. Okay. I don't mean like legally. Like, does our society say you can't do such and such? Obviously, it does, because we live in a society ruled by laws. You can't go out on the. You can. Okay. You're not supposed to go out on the Middle Tennessee Boulevard and drive 50 miles an hour down the road. Why? Because it's it's idiotic. It's a 35 mile an hour speed zone. Okay? So what happens if you do, and the blue lights come up behind you, you're going to get a ticket, right? But you were morally, so to speak, free to do that, correct? That is, your car, and this is my problem with totally self-driving cars, if we ever arrive to that point, your car, when you pull out onto Middle Tennessee Boulevard, is able to go faster than 35 miles an hour. I could see a point in the future with totally automated cars where when you pull onto a road, or when that car pulls onto the road, like if you pull up maps while you're driving, it'll show the speed limit. That car will automatically change to that speed limit. And then when you pull onto the highway, it'll automatically change to that speed limit. Governed by if there are cars nearby and such, right? That removes your freedom to say, to hell with the law, I'm going to, go 100 miles an hour kind of a thing, all right? So he's wrestling with that versus this. Fate has nothing to do with law. Fate has everything to do with, are we responsible for our actions? Look at it this way. If I were to walk in one morning, pull out a gun, and randomly, boom, shoot somebody. If there is such a thing as fate, I mean, might say, oh, good, I don't have to listen to Sherman for another 45 minutes. It might be, if there is such a thing as fate, then you could not hold me responsible for that because I was fated to do it. Fate implies no matter what you do, that morning that I walked in and pulled out that weapon, that was going to happen. Period. Okay? And long story short, that's what happens in Oedipus. Yes?
Is there a difference between fate and destiny?
Philosophically, probably. I'm not a philosopher. I was a philosophy major for like one semester. I had like 7 different majors. That's why it took me 7 years to do my undergraduate work. Destiny kind of implies, or destiny can imply, that there is something in you, and it's in each individual, and it's different for each individual, that kind of makes you who you are and makes you, I'm trying to think how to put this, do what you want to do. What's your major, as an example?
Criminal justice.
Criminal justice. So the idea behind destiny would suggest there is something in your nature. I don't mean necessarily DNA. In your soul, in your consciousness, in your spirit, whatever term you want to use. There is something in there that kind of calls you to that end. The Greeks actually used 2 different words for this. It was your genius or your daemon, and it's that word from which we get the modern English demon. Okay? Both of these imply there is like this spirit. Okay? Don't think fallen angel, it's possessing you, anything like that. It's the best way I've heard it described by one guy is it's like what tells an acorn to grow up to become a pine tree, right? No. What do acorns grow up to be? What do they grow into? Oak trees. Pine cones produce seeds that become pine trees. And a pine seed will never become an acorn. And an acorn will never turn into a pine tree. Unless we want to get into all kinds of CRISPR gene editing and all that kind of scary stuff. To me, very scary stuff, right? So there's this acorn in you that says, I'm going to become the mighty criminal justice, whatever. Lawyer, cop, FBI, kind of a thing. That's different than fate. Fate in the Greek system is, here you have the earth, and everything down here on earth is pretty much governed by chance. That is down here. Behind all of that, you have fate. Fate exists out there, all right? Side by side, kind of to fate, are the gods. The gods don't control fate, and fate doesn't control the gods. But the gods, in the Greek and Roman system, they just love screwing around with us. Both literally and figuratively. If you're female, stay away from the male gods, Zeus and Apollo and all those guys. And if you're a man, stay away from Juno and Hera and Athena and Aphrodite because they like messing around with men. So you've got this kind of thing. And, we're down here and we're just like pawns. We're just being moved around. So Sophocles wants to examine this problem. Okay? So let's look at how the play begins. we get our cast of characters. Oedipus, king of Thebes. Thebes is a town in Greece. It's not Thebes of ancient Egypt, right? This is Greece. Jocasta, his wife, Creon, his brother-in-law, Tiresias, an old blind prophet. And Tiresias shows up in a lot of different plays, right? He's not just Sophocles, right? He's part of the myth. He's kind of like, the prototype of the wise seer or prophet. Okay? One thing about him, he's never wrong. In all the plays that he figures into, he's never wrong. Okay? You have a priest, a couple of messengers, a herdsman, and a chorus of old men of Thebes. Now, the purpose of the chorus, go back and read the introductory material or watch the previous lecture that I sent. The purpose of the chorus is to comment on the action and words that came before. Right? And the chorus does that in two ways. Your book mentions this. You have the strophe and the antistrophe. The strophe is when the chorus, kind of as a pack, a group, walks from one side to the other side of the stage talking. And then they stop. And then you get the antistrophe, where they go back. That's all they do. They're not doing any action. They're just slowly ambling from one side of the stage to the other. Okay? So, play opens. We're told it's in front of the palace of Oedipus. To the right of the stage, near the altar, stands the priest with a crowd of children. And Oedipus emerges from the central door. And you've got a drawing, you have a picture actually, on 1123 in the 11th edition of the classical Greek theater in Delphi, Greece. Okay, now this theater is 2,500 years old. It's used every summer. They actually still put on productions here. Okay, the what's called the scani, that is the house that would be, or the building that would be back here, it's only partially there. So I'm pretty sure when they do have productions, and it's not like a full summer long, they'll do special things. That when they do have productions, they put up, like when MTSU has a big thing, they put the big old tent outside. They use that, and that's so that people can change costume. Characters can go out, get a drink, wait their turn, come back out. Okay. So Oedipus comes out the center of the stage, out of the back door, and he addresses the audience: children, young sons, daughters of old Cadmus. And you've got a footnote down there. Why do you sit here with your suppliant crowns? Suppliant, they're praying. They're asking for aid, for help. The town is heavy with a mingled burden of sounds and smells, of groans and hymns and incense. I did not think it fit that I should hear of this from messengers, but came myself. Okay, so the town, he says, is full of a burden. And the burden is sounds and smells and groans and hymns and incense. These are all parts of the rites of supplication. Sacrifices are being made. Prayers are being said. Hymns are being chanted. There are moans probably from the animals as they get slaughtered and such. And the moans are also from the people who are sick. Right? So he says, I, Oedipus, whom all men call the Great. So what does that tell us about Oedipus?
Thinks highly of himself.
He has a good opinion of himself. Let's put it that way. It's going to become very clear he has a very high opinion of himself. All right? One of the words that was in the introduction, the background stuff about Sophocles, is hubris. Hubris is pride or arrogance, right? Let's say you got, full marks on the exam. I don't remember how much extra credit was, 20 points, something like that. And you got 120 points. That's something you should be proud of. I know there are some people who say, no, you could probably still do better. I'm like, really? How? write your own question and answer it. No, you can't do any better than that, okay? How's that different than this kind of pride?
This is like, it's negative, where it's like more than it needs to be.
Yeah, it's like, well, I got 120 and the rest of you are a bunch of idiots. That's the excessive kind of, that's the I'm better than everybody else, okay? You're old and they are young. You, he's talking about the priest. They, talking about the children at the altar. Come speak for them. What do you fear or want that you sit here, suppliant? Indeed, I'm willing to give all that you may need. I would be very hard should I not pity suppliants like these. So, what are you praying for? Now, they're at the altar. If they're at the altar, who are they praying to? The gods. Okay? Notice what Oedipus says, though. I will solve your problems. Yeah, kind of dangerous. Okay? He says, I'm willing to give all that you may need. I would be very hard should I not pity suppliants like these. So, the priest, O ruler of my country, Oedipus, you see our company around the altar. You see our ages. Some like these who cannot yet fly far. That is, their children, like baby birds. Okay? And some of us heavy with age. These children are the chosen among the young. I, the priest of Zeus, blah, 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 blah. So let's skip a bit and go down to like line 20, I think it's 26, can't quite tell. A blight is on the fruitful plants of the earth. A blight is on the cattle in the fields. A blight is on our women, that no children are born to them. So, plants are dying, crops are dying, livestock is dying, and no children are being born. Or, no children are being born alive. A god that carries fire, a deadly pestilence, is on our town, strikes us and spares not. The house of Cadmus is empty of its people, while Black Death grows rich in groaning and in lamentation. So, he says, we didn't come to this altar because we thought of you as a god. Why? Greek system, gods are very jealous of their godhood. If you kind of encroach on that, they tend to strike you. He said, but rather, judging you the first of men and all the chances of this life, and when we mortals have to do with more than man. What's he getting at? He's getting at, and he's going to say in the next few lines, how Oedipus became king. See, kingship is usually passed down father to son. You came, and by your coming saved our city, freed us from tribute, which we paid of old to the Sphinx, cruel singer. Okay? What was the riddle of the Sphinx? Anybody know?
It was like, what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, and 3 at night.
Yep, that was it exactly. Okay? And if you couldn't answer the riddle, the Sphinx ate you. And if they didn't provide somebody to try to answer the riddle, the Sphinx demanded tribute. And I think it was something like 1 person a day. Sphinx has been there a while. So they're kind of, you got to get the babies going. The women have got to start having kids. Why? So that we can provide tribute. Kind of gruesome when you think about it. So, this you did in virtue of no knowledge we could give you. That is, you answered the riddle of the Sphinx, even though we couldn't help you. It was God that aided you. Men say. And you were held with God's assistance to have saved our lives. Now, your book has God capitalized. That doesn't mean the Judeo-Christian or even the Muslim God, Allah. It's not that God. It's kind of probably Zeus, the high God, the sky father. Okay? So, Oedipus, greatest in all men's eyes, here falling at your feet, we all entreat you, find us some strength for rescue. Maybe the God will speak to you. Perhaps you'll learn something. In other words, investigate. Get to the bottom of this problem. Okay? Line 54 on page 1129. For now this land of ours calls you its savior, since you saved it once. Let us never speak about your reign as of a time when first our feet were set secure and high, but later fell to ruin. Raise up our city, save it, raise it up. You brought us luck once, do it again. So Oedipus says, you've come full of longing, but I've known the story before you told it only too well. That is, I know why you're here. Word has already reached me. Okay? I know you're all sick. There is not one of you sick though you are that is as sick as I myself. Why is he sick? Bill Clinton was famous for lots of things. But one of the things Clinton was most famous for as president was feeling your pain. I don't care what you think about Bill Clinton. Clinton could have been a Hollywood actor. And what I mean by that is, if something horrible happened, Clinton could go into that situation and on the drop of a dime, produce tears. Now, some people would say it was all totally honest. Other people say it was all totally an act. That's why I said he could have been an actor. But he was able to convey that sense of compassion, that I feel your pain kind of a thing. That's what Oedipus is getting at. You think you're the only one that's sick. I'm sick too. Why? It's his city. Literally, his city. The king kind of owned the whole kit and caboodle, right? Your several sorrows each have single scope and touch but one of you. That is, her sorrow is hers, and hers is hers, and his is his. He says, but I have all of yours. Right? My spirit groans for city and myself and you at once. You have not roused me like a man from sleep. Know that I've given many tears to this. Wow, sounds like he's prepared. So he says, I sent, I'm not sure how you pronounce that guy's name. I think it's Menicius' son, Creon, Jocasta's brother. Who's Jocasta? His wife. Creon is his brother-in-law to Apollo, to his Pythian temple. Okay? Apollo is one of the gods that you could go to for prophecy, or you could go to for answering life's hard questions. Sometimes he would, sometimes he wouldn't. Okay? To find out how to save the city. And he says, and I'm kind of surprised he isn't back yet. Why hasn't Creon returned? It's been a few days. Priest, thank you for your gracious word. Your servants here signal Creon is coming. That is, we've received word he's on his way back. Oedipus sees Creon. Okay? So I don't know how they're staging this. If he just sees him coming from the side of the stage, or if maybe he's walking down, an aisle and heading towards the stage, and he says, look, his face is bright. Why would his face be bright?
Running.
Could be from running. Could also be because he was in the presence of the god and reflects that kind of light. O holy Lord Apollo, grant that his news too may be bright for us and bring us safety. The priest, I think it's good news. For else his head would not be crowned with sprigs of fruitful laurel. Laurel is the plant that was woven into a wreath that would be given to victors. Okay? Whether of an athletic contest or of a military battle. Oedipus will know soon. Creon comes in. Lord Creon, my good brother, what's the word you bring us from the god? A good word. For things hard to bear themselves, if in the final issue all is well, I count complete good fortune. Well, that's kind of a riddling response. It's an enigmatic response. Why? Look at what he says again. Things hard to bear themselves are good. Notice I'm turning the syntax around a little bit. If in the final issue all is well. So there might be a period of turmoil, of kind of bad things, but the end result will be good. Okay? Oedipus, Notice, what do you mean? I could solve the riddle of the Sphinx, but what the are you talking about? Be clear. Okay? If you will hear my news before these others, I'm ready to speak, or else to go within. Why does Crayon suggest going back inside the palace? There's at least two reasons.
You don't want everyone hearing the prophecy?
He didn't want everyone to hear. Okay? What are two possible reasons for that? One's very basic. One's a little more, I guess you could use maybe the word sinister or loaded or significant something. The basic one is he's essentially acting like a diplomat here. Okay? But he hasn't gone and spoken to the king of another country or the queen of another country. He's gone and spoken to or received word from a god. And he's saying kind of, maybe what the God has to say is for your ears only. Let's go inside and talk. Okay? The other thing is what he's actually going to say. He might be suggesting, you don't want the people out here to hear. No, speak it all. The grief I bear it for these. What's that tell us about Oedipus? Is that a wise move on his part? No, it's not. It's rash. It's impetuous. It's like he doesn't even pause to think about what Crayon has obliquely or subtly said. All right? I'll tell you then what I heard from the god. King Phoebus, that's another name for Apollo, in plain words commanded us to drive out the pollution from our land. Pollution grown and ingrained within the land. Drive it out. Don't cherish it till it's past cure. Well, what's so bad about that? Did Apollo tell Crayon what the pollution was? Did he name the pollution? No, he didn't. He does kind of say what the pollution is. There's a murderer, and not just any old murderer. The murderer of the previous king is in the land. Okay, we're going to find out. Okay? So, Oedipus, what's the rite of purification? It's kind of like, how many birds do I need to sacrifice, or cows, or pigs, or whatever? How shall it be done? What's this rite of purification? By banishing a man, or expiation of blood by blood. So, banishing, kicking him out, or what's the expiation of blood by blood? Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Blood for blood. Kill the person who did the killing. Since it is murder guilt which holds our city in this destroying storm. Who? Who did it? Notice he doesn't get a name. Before you piloted the state, we had a king called Laius. Yeah, I've heard of him. Have not seen him. God commanded clearly, let someone punish with force this dead man's murderers. Plural. More than one. Where are they? Give me the address. I'll send the FBI. We'll be right there. The clue is in this land. That which is sought is found. The unheeded thing escapes. So said the God. Notice how the God speaks. In riddles. Okay? There's going to be a passage later on where Sophocles is going to write about the gods never speaking clearly. This is the person. We could have ended the play on 2 pages. In which case, we wouldn't have a play. Okay? And we wouldn't be able to discuss this. So, Oedipus, was it home? That is, did he die at home? Or in the country? Or in another country? So, if he died at home, and it's kind of implying in his home, then that would suggest who are your prime suspects? The people of the palace, okay? Or if it was while he was traveling or in the country, that means pretty much everybody in the land is a possible suspect. Or if he was in another country, then that country's people are the possible suspects. Okay? So he's kind of reasoning from more specific to much more general. Crayon says, he went upon an embassy, that is, he went to kind of engage in diplomatic negotiations, if you want, but never returned. No messenger. No fellow traveler who knew what happened. They were all killed but one. He fled in terror. He could tell us nothing. But one thing only. That is, notice, he can't tell the name, the messenger. What was it? What could he tell? He said that the robbers they encountered, this is line 142, were many, and the hands that did the murder were many. It was no man's single power. Okay, so there's some good solid evidence. The previous king was killed by a band of murderers, not just one. How could a robber dare a deed like this, were he not helped with money from the city, money and treachery? Notice what Oedipus is starting to think. There had to be some kind of conspiracy. These people had to be helped by people within the city. Okay? Crayon, that's kind of what we thought. But Laius was dead, and in our trouble, there wasn't anybody to help. What do you mean? Why wasn't there anybody to help? Why didn't you launch an investigation? Because seemingly, the moment Laius died, up pops the Sphinx outside the entrance to the city of Thebes. Okay? Don't know how, don't know why. It's just what the story gives us. Oedipus, I will bring this to light again. And you're going to get one of the kind of themes of the play, light versus darkness, sight versus blindness. Okay? So Oedipus says, I will bring this to light again, meaning I will uncover what is now hidden. I will shine the light into the darkness, and the truth will be known. King Phoebus fittingly took this care about the dead, and you too fittingly. And justly you will see in me an ally, a champion of my country, Thebes, and my god, Apollo. For when I drive pollution from the land, I will not serve a distant friend's advantage, but act in my own interest. How so? How is he acting in his own interest? Well, whoever he was that killed the king may readily wish to dispatch me with his murderous hand. Notice, Crayon said there was more than one murderer. Oedipus is implying there's one murderer. He says his hand. He doesn't say their hands. He says I will drive him, not them. Okay? So helping the dead king, I help myself. Right? If the person or persons have already killed one king, he's kind of saying all kings are in danger. Come, children, take your suppliant bows and go up from the altars. Call the assembly, let it meet upon the understanding. I'll do whatever is required. God will decide whether we prosper or remain in sorrow. So the priest tells the children to rise. They get up and they leave, all except for the chorus. And now the chorus comes out, okay? And they walk and they say those first lines. What is the sweet spoken word of God from the shrine of Pytho, rich in gold that had come to glorious Thebes? I am stretched on the rack of doubt, blah, blah, blah. That is, the chorus is saying, we haven't heard exactly what's happened. So what was the word as they walk across? What was the word that was spoken to Crayon, blah, blah, blah? And then they get to the other side, and they start to come back. And they say, first I call on you, Athena, deathless daughter of Zeus, and Artemis, earth upholder. And they call on other gods. Speak to us. Give us wisdom. Give us insight. All right? So we're going to go down to the end of the chorus, and on 1133, line 225, Oedipus comes back out. He says, for what you ask me, if you will hear my words and hear and welcome them and fight the plague, you will find strength and lightening over your load. So they're begging for help from whom? They, the chorus, from the gods. Oedipus comes out and again says, in me you'll find strength and lightening of your load. Now, does he do that because the gods have moved him to come out and say that? We're not told that. Hark to me what I say to you. I say as one that is a stranger to the story, a stranger to the deed. I am as ignorant of the story of Laius' death as I am of the act of Laius' death. Somewhere to write. This is dramatic irony. Why? In dramatic irony, a character says something, okay, believing something that the audience knows to not be true. In other words, the character says something and the audience goes, oh man, is he going to get it? He just stepped right into it. Okay? We don't know what that is yet, though. We, who are unfamiliar with the Oedipus myth, perhaps. Okay? So, I would not be far upon the track if I alone were tracing it without a clue. But now, since after all was finished, I became a citizen among you. I proclaimed to all the men of Thebes, whoso among you knows the murderer by whose hand Laius, son of Lepticus, died, I command him to tell everything to me. Yes, though he fears himself to take the blame on his own head. For bitter punishment he shall have none, but leave this land unharmed. If you know who murdered Laius, tell me now. You won't be punished. Well, you won't be beaten or killed. You will be allowed to leave the land unharmed. And I think it's even implied, he's saying, the murderer will be banished, unharmed, at this point, possibly suggesting that, okay? Or if he knows the murderer, another, a foreigner, still let him speak, for I will pay him and be grateful too. But if you shall keep silence, if perhaps some one of you, to shield a guilty friend, or for his own sake, that is, or if you're the murderer, shall reject my words, here's what's going to happen. And he lays down the law. Or more specifically, he lays down the punishment that will occur. I forbid that man, whoever he be, my land, my land. So, if you're the murderer, or if you know who the murderer is and you're protecting that person, you are now persona non grata. You are a person without grace in my land. And what that persona non grata means is the law will not protect you. You have to leave. See, the phrase outlaw comes from Old English. And what that phrase literally meant was not that you had broken the law. It means the law won't protect you. For example, if you killed someone in Anglo-Saxon England, if you killed someone and you didn't agree to pay what's called weregild, means were like werewolf, man, gold, the price that is owed to somebody for their brother sister, mother, whatever, having been killed, and there were set amounts for your level of society. If you did not agree to pay that to the family of the person who died, then you became outlaw. The law could no longer protect you. Anybody in that person's family could hunt you down and kill you. And if they killed you, everything was fine. You don't have to pay anything. You're not guilty of anything. All right? So, he says, I forbid you my land where I hold sovereignty and throne, and I forbid any to welcome him or cry him greeting or make him a sharer in sacrifice or offering to the gods or give him water for his hands to wash. So, what's he getting at? This person, whether it's the murderer or someone who is protecting the murderer, that person is to be entirely shunned. I mean, you want to talk about cancel culture? This is cancel culture. I mean, taken to the nth degree. I command all to drive him from their homes, since he is our pollution, as the oracle of Pythos God proclaimed him now to me. So I stand forth a champion of the God and of the man who died. Again, no, I shouldn't say that yet, because some of you haven't read this. Upon the murderer I invoke this curse, whether he is one man. No, I've got to. Sophocles' audience knew who the murderer was. I'm going to give it away. It's Socrates. It's Socrates. Name, Oedipus. He doesn't know he's the murderer. He's totally ignorant that he is the murderer. But the audience is sitting there, and he's just bloviating all this stuff about I'm going to rain fire and brimstone on him, and they're sitting there going, boy, is he in for it. Why? Because when you make that kind of promise in Greek tragedy, as a king, who holds you to it? Your people and, more importantly, the gods. Okay? It's like an oath, and the gods don't take oaths lightly. So when he says, I stand forth a champion of the God and of the man who died, we could jump to the end. If he's a champion of the god of Apollo, that means I represent the power and authority and majesty and judgment of Apollo. I become Apollo's sword. Right? And he's a champion of the man who died. Well, who's that? That's Laius. Okay? So he's defending Apollo and he's defending Laius. I've already given up that he's the murderer. So how's he going to achieve these two judgments? It's got to be on himself. But that's only part of the story. That's not even the most significant part. Upon the murderer I invoke this curse, whether he is one man and all unknown, or one of many. Now, he's been told, point blank, by Crayon, okay, that it was many. Wait, by Crayon? Yeah, either Crayon or the priest. That the messenger, the one person who survived, said it wasn't a single murderer. There were several involved. And yet Oedipus kind of is pushing that aside and saying, okay, if it's one, and then he throws out the possibility that there might be more, or one of many, may he wear out his life in misery to miserable doom. That's like, boom. If you've ever seen the Ten Commandments, you know, the old Charlton Heston, it's like Yul Brynner's character of Ramses. So let it be written, so let it be done. That's the judgment. The person who killed Laius will do what? Wear out his life in misery to miserable doom. Right? If with my knowledge he lives at my hearth, his palace is right here, by the way. If he lives here, this murderer, I pray that I myself may feel my curse. And that's when the audience, you can almost expect some people either start laughing or some people, scream. Ah! Why? Because he's just called it down on himself. If, notice he says, on you I lay my charge to fulfill all this for me, for the God and for this land of ours destroyed and blighted by the God forsaken. Okay? And he says, and even if the God wasn't involved, I would not fit you so to leave it lie unpurified, since a good man is dead and one that was a king. Search it out. Why? Because I am now the holder of his office. And then look what he says. What comes right after that? Line 274. And have his bed and wife that once was his. When he solved the riddle of the Sphinx, he was welcomed in as a conquering hero, and because the previous king is dead, but his wife is still alive, he's made the husband of the wife. Okay? When the king is dead, before Oedipus comes in, Jocasta doesn't rule. Women did not count for anything in Greek society, even queens. Okay? For the most part, I'll talk about one tragedy where, they might a little bit. So, he says, I have his bed and wife that once was his, and had his line not been unfortunate, we would have common children. What does he mean? Had his line not been unfortunate?
She wasn't able to have kids.
He wasn't.
One of those two, they didn't have a child. Okay? But Oedipus and Jocasta, the dead king's wife, do have children. Okay? Had his line not been unfortunate, we would have common children. That is, we would have children kind of together. And what he means is Laius's children would be raised alongside my children. Fortune leaped upon his head. Fortune, in Greek, I had chance. Well, sometimes the Greeks portray chance as a goddess Fortune. And Fortune in the Middle Ages, long after the Greeks, I don't remember if she's portrayed this in Greek literature or not. Fortune has a wheel that she turns constantly. And that wheel represents where you are in your life. Okay? Think of a wheel, and it spins. Where do you want to be on this wheel? Because it never stops. Where do you want this wheel to be in your life? Do you want to be on this side of the wheel? No, because where is that going? It's going down. This is the lowest of the low. This is not good life. This is getting better. This is really good. This is where you wish you could say, okay, I'm going to step off the Ferris wheel now, but it doesn't happen that way. Okay? So everything is constantly changing in this life, right? He goes on. Fortune leaped upon his head. She knocked him down. Because of all these things, I fight in his defense as for my father. Huge. Trying not to give it away, but I have to. Foreshadowing. Laius was his father. He doesn't know that. He's totally oblivious to it. Nobody knows that. All right?
That's the previous king's name, correct?
Laius is the previous king, yes.
So he had kids with his mother?
Yes.
Wait, so he
Yes.
killed him, stole his house and wife, and that turned out to be his dad, and is now
Yes.
looking.
Yes. That's part that everybody in the audience is totally aware. But Oedipus is totally ignorant of all of this. Yes.
So he doesn't know that he killed Laius, correct?
Correct.
Does he know that he killed someone?
Yes, he does. That's pulled out later. Okay? But he has no clue absolutely no clue that the woman he's married to and is currently still sleeping with is his mother. And the children that he has had by her are his brothers and sisters and daughters and sons.
So Elias and Yocasta could have kids.
They did.
So,
They had at least one.
so
Okay.
why was their blood unfortunate?
We'll find that. It's 8:55. We'll find that out on Monday. Great, thank you for great questions, because I didn't have to just blurt it all out on my own.